If you believe you already know everything about Jesus, I ask you not to turn away. What I am about to share is not another familiar story. It is not a sermon. It is not a testimony crafted to impress or persuade. It is a truth that shattered my expectations, overturned my understanding of faith, power, and identity, and forced me to confront everything I thought I knew about what it means to follow Christ. My name is Ibrahim, and I never imagined I would be the one carrying this message. For most of my life, faith was something inherited, woven quietly into routine, tradition, and duty. It shaped how we lived, how we spoke, how we understood the world. Faith was present everywhere, yet questioned nowhere. I learned early how to respect tradition, how to honor authority, how to carry belief without disturbing the surface of certainty. But even as a child, I sensed something unsettled beneath the rituals, something unspoken, something unfinished. I did not have the language for it then, only a quiet awareness that rules and reverence alone could not answer the deeper questions forming inside me. As I grew older, so did my responsibilities, and with them, my exposure to the realities of leadership. I saw hope in the eyes of children who still believed tomorrow could be better. I saw exhaustion etched into the faces of farmers who carried generations of struggle on their backs. I saw the silent strength of mothers who held families together while the world demanded more than it ever gave back. I also saw the shadows, corruption disguised as stability, violence justified by necessity, old wounds from colonial histories that never fully healed. I wanted to change things, to lead with justice, to build something stronger, more honest, more humane. What I did not expect was that this path would lead me to the feet of Jesus, not through argument, not through persuasion, but through crisis, and through a question I could no longer silence. Who is God really? The change did not come all at once. It arrived the way truth often does, quietly at first, then all at once. A crisis erupted in the north. Families were displaced overnight. Villages burned. Fear spread faster than information. As a leader, I was expected to be decisive, strong, unshaken. The public saw confidence, briefings, orders, but behind closed doors, I was just a man carrying weight far heavier than authority was ever meant to hold. Every decision felt irreversible. Every delay felt dangerous. Every mistake carried consequences measured in human lives. At night, when the noise of advisors and radios finally faded, the silence became unbearable. I would stand alone in my office, staring out at the city lights, a nation awake with worry, and feel the limits of my own strength pressing in. That was when I prayed. Not the formal prayers of my childhood, not words shaped by habit or expectation, but the prayer of a man at the end of himself. If you are real, if you see us, show me what to do, show me who you are. There was no thunder, no voice from the sky, no sudden clarity, only exhaustion. That night, sleep came heavily. And then, the dream. I saw a man. His face was marked by wind and sun, as if he had walked long roads among ordinary people. His eyes carried a depth that unsettled me. Not judgment, not anger, but recognition. He spoke my name, not as a title, not as a position, but as if he knew me. He spoke of justice, not as power, but as responsibility, of mercy, not as weakness, but as courage, of love, not bound by religion, politics, or fear. When I woke, the room was unchanged, but I was not. Something had shifted, quietly, irrevocably. I tried to dismiss it, to bury myself in work, to return to certainty, but the questions followed me. Who was this man? Why did his words remain when everything else faded? And why? Did they feel true? I did not tell anyone, not my advisors, not my family, not the people who trusted me to appear certain. Instead, I searched in silence, quietly, carefully, as if even curiosity itself could be dangerous. I began to read, at first out of obligation, to understand what I had experienced. Then, out of necessity, because I could not stop. I read the Gospels. I read about Jesus, Isa, as I had known him since childhood, a prophet, a teacher, a figure safely contained within familiar categories. But the man I encountered on those pages did not stay contained. He spoke with authority, yet rejected power. He challenged injustice, yet refused violence. He stood with the poor, the rejected, the inconvenient, and unsettled those who benefited from order without compassion. This Jesus was not distant. He understood exhaustion. He understood fear. He understood what it meant to carry responsibility that crushed the soul. And slowly, something became clear. Jesus was not who I expected. He was not safe. He was not predictable. He did not reinforce systems built on fear or control. He disrupted them. He did not ask for surface obedience. He demanded the heart. Broken hearts, searching hearts, hearts like mine. That realization frightened me more than the dream ever had, because this Jesus did not fit comfortably into my life. To follow him would mean change, real change, not symbolic, not private, and that raised a question I was not ready to answer. What happens when faith collides with power? I was becoming someone new in private, while remaining someone else in public. The tension grew. I was expected to be unshakable, decisive, certain. Yet, inside, I was unraveling, afraid of what discovery would cost me, afraid of what honesty would destroy, afraid of who I would become if I did not stop. And still, I kept reading, because once truth begins to speak, silence becomes unbearable. My faith grew in secret, and with it, a fracture formed inside me. By day, I was the image people expected, the leader, the voice of certainty, the symbol of stability. By night, I was someone else entirely, a man kneeling in silence, a man asking questions he could never ask aloud, a man discovering that the hardest thing about faith is not belief, but honesty. I feared discovery, not because I doubted what I was becoming, but because I understood the cost. Would my people lose trust in me? Would allies turn away? Would my name become a warning rather than a hope? I told myself that secrecy was wisdom, that discretion protected unity, that silence was leadership. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was afraid of losing power, afraid of disappointing those who believed in me, afraid of standing alone. Each day, the gap widened. In meetings, I listened to reports of unrest, corruption, foreign pressure, all while carrying the weight of a hidden life. I signed documents with steady hands, even as my heart was anything but steady. And then one night, I opened the gospel to the story of Nicodemus, a respected leader, educated, powerful, a man who came to Jesus in the dark, afraid to be seen, yet desperate for truth. I saw myself in him, not weak, not ignorant, but divided. That was when I understood something that changed everything. Faith is not only about belief, it is about courage. The courage to step into the light when darkness feels safer. The courage to live as one person, not two. But courage does not arrive all at once. It grows quietly, in struggle, in honesty, in the slow refusal to keep hiding. And I was running out of places to hide. The turning point did not come in a palace. It came in a hospital. I was visiting survivors of an attack in the capital, men and women wounded in ways no speech could repair, children learning too early what fear feels like. Cameras followed, advisors hovered. Everything was controlled, measured, scripted, until it wasn't. I moved from bed to bed, offering words that felt increasingly insufficient, when a young boy reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak. His eyes were steady. "Will you pray for me, Mr. President?" The room froze. My advisors tensed. The cameras adjusted. Protocol screamed for caution. In that single moment, I understood the choice before me. I could hide behind titles and procedures, or I could be honest, not as a politician, not as a symbol, but as a man. I knelt beside his bed. No statement, no announcement, just presence. I closed my eyes and prayed, not carefully, not strategically, but truthfully. I prayed for healing, for peace, for a hope that reached beyond politics, beyond religion, beyond fear. When I opened my eyes, the room had changed. The boy's mother was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet release of someone who had been seen. I felt it then, a strange, unsettling freedom, the kind that only comes when you stop running. I knew the cost would follow, and it did. The whispers began almost immediately. Questions, rumors, suspicion. Had the president changed? Had his faith shifted? Was this betrayal or something else? I was urged to deny it, to clarify, to control the narrative. But something inside me resisted. I was tired of living divided, tired of hiding the most important truth about who I was becoming. And for the first time, I understood this clearly. Once truth steps into the light, it does not return quietly to the shadows. The rumors moved faster than facts ever do. In the corridors of power, in markets and neighborhoods, in mosques and churches, people whispered my name alongside questions no one dared to ask out loud. Had the president changed his faith? Was it true? What did it mean for the nation? My advisors urged immediate action, deny everything, reassure the public, restore certainty. They told me silence would be interpreted as weakness, that ambiguity would invite chaos, that leadership required control. But the truth is, I was already exhausted from control, from pretending, from editing myself, from living behind carefully chosen words. Every denial felt like a betrayal of the very integrity I claimed to represent. And then came the pressure closer to home. Political allies began to distance themselves. Opponents seized the moment, accusing me of betrayal, of my heritage, my people, my past. Even my family struggled to understand. My mother called me in tears. She reminded me of who I had been, of the faith that shaped my childhood, of the shame she feared would follow our name. Her pain cut deeper than any accusation. For nights, I did not sleep. I weighed every consequence, not just for myself, but for the nation. Would honesty divide us? Would silence poison us slowly instead? I met quietly with religious leaders of every background. I listened more than I spoke. I heard fear, anger, concern, but also hope. Some warned me the country was not ready. Others told me the people could survive disagreement, but not deception. In the end, it was not strategy that decided for me, it was conviction. That truth, even when costly, is always better than a lie. I called a press conference. Journalists filled the room. Cameras rolled. The weight of history pressed down on my chest. My hands trembled. My heart raced. But my voice was steady. I have always promised to serve this nation with honesty and integrity, I began. Today, I must be honest with you about something deeply personal. My journey of faith has led me to a place I did not expect. I have come to believe in Jesus Christ, not as a rejection of my heritage, but as the fulfillment of my search for truth and justice. I know this will be difficult for many to hear. I know it may cost me your trust, your support, even my position. But I cannot lead you with a divided heart. The silence that followed was absolute, and I knew there was no turning back. The reaction was immediate and unforgiving. In some cities, protests erupted, fueled by fear, misunderstanding, and anger. Statements were issued, accusations multiplied. Some claimed I had abandoned my people. Others said I was serving foreign interests. A few went further, questioning my right to lead at all. Threats followed, warnings whispered through security channels, rumors of coups, predictions of collapse. The foundations beneath my leadership felt suddenly fragile. My security detail doubled. Meetings became tense. Every movement was scrutinized, and yet the greatest weight was not political. It was personal. Friends I had trusted for years grew distant. Colleagues resigned quietly, unwilling to stand beside uncertainty. Within my own family, love remained, but understanding fractured. There were days I felt utterly alone, nights when I questioned whether honesty had been reckless, whether faith was worth the price I was paying. But something strange happened amid the chaos. Letters began to arrive, messages from ordinary people, Muslims, Christians, those of no faith at all. Some disagreed with me, some were afraid, but many said the same thing. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for not pretending. You gave voice to questions we have never been allowed to ask. They did not ask me to convince them, they asked me to listen. And for the first time, I realized something unexpected. My greatest vulnerability had opened a door, not to agreement, but to conversation, not to certainty, but to trust. In the weeks that followed, the noise did not disappear, but it changed. The outrage softened into curiosity, the fear into dialogue. I was invited to speak, not only in churches, but in mosques, schools, and community halls. I did not go as a preacher. I went as a man who had chosen honesty over safety. And slowly, something began to shift. The storm did not end, but something inside me did. For the first time in my life, I was no longer hiding. The weight of secrecy, heavy, exhausting, corrosive, lifted. In its place came clarity. Not certainty about the future, not protection from consequences, but integrity. I could look people in the eye and know I was speaking as one person, not two. I could pray without fear, read the scriptures without shame. The contrast was striking. Outside, chaos. Inside, calm. But peace did not mean comfort. Some friendships never recovered. Some doors closed permanently. The pain in my family's voices did not disappear. There were moments when loneliness pressed in so tightly I could hardly breathe. Moments when leadership felt unbearably heavy. Moments when I wondered if I had misunderstood the call entirely. In those moments, I returned to the words that first drew me in. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Not escape, not safety, rest. I began to understand something essential. Jesus never promised security. He never offered insulation from loss or pain. He offered himself. And somehow, that was enough. Leadership changed shape for me. It was no longer about projecting strength. It was about practicing honesty, not about appearing unbreakable, but about standing upright even when broken. Slowly, conversations across the nation changed. Faith was no longer whispered. Doubt was no longer forbidden. Difference no longer meant danger. We did not agree more, but we listened better. And that, I learned, is how real change begins. Over time, my story stopped being just a controversy. It became a conversation, not about religion, but about identity. I was invited to speak to young leaders across the country, Muslims, Christians, those shaped by traditional beliefs. They asked difficult questions. How can you lead everyone when your faith is so public? Are you not afraid of dividing the nation? Do you regret what you did? I answered them without certainty, but with truth. I do not expect agreement. I do not expect ease. But I believe trust cannot exist without honesty. If I cannot be true to myself, how can I ask anyone else to be true to their convictions? We may not share the same faith, but we can share the same commitment to dignity, justice, and respect. Their response surprised me. Not outrage, not rejection, but recognition. They spoke of their own divided lives, of the pressure to conform, of the fear of asking forbidden questions. Some had hidden beliefs, others had hidden doubts, all had hidden parts of themselves. In those rooms, I saw it clearly. Leadership is not about having all the answers. It is about creating space for truth. Slowly, something shifted within the nation. Conversations grew more open. Differences felt less threatening. Honesty became something to respect, even when it was uncomfortable. I began to understand that influence does not always move through power. Sometimes, it moves through vulnerability. Looking back now, I see that this journey was never only about me. It was about the power of truth and the fear we feel when it threatens the lives we have carefully built. I lost things I thought I could not live without. Certainty, approval, belonging. I felt the weight of rejection, the loneliness of standing apart, the grief of watching familiar worlds fade. But in losing what I thought defined me, I found something far greater. Freedom. Not the freedom of comfort, but the freedom of integrity. The freedom to live without dividing myself. To lead without pretending. To stand in the light, even when it is costly. This is the truth about Jesus that many do not expect. He does not call us to safety. He does not promise protection from loss. He calls us to courage, to honesty, to love that risks rejection, to faith that refuses to hide. And when we follow him, truly follow, we are changed, not into something safer, but into something truer. If you are listening to this and hiding a part of yourself, your faith, your doubt, your calling, your truth, know this: you are not alone. The path of honesty is narrow. It is marked by loss and struggle, but it is also marked by grace, by strength you did not know you possessed, by peace that does not depend on approval, by a light that finds its way even into the darkest places. I do not know how history will judge my choices. I do not know what the future holds, but I know this. I would rather lose everything than live divided. I would rather walk in the light than hide in the shadows. Because leadership does not begin with power, it begins with truth. And faith, when lived openly, does not just change one life, it changes what becomes possible for many.